My name's Adam from Startup Network Europe. Really happy to host this event today. Startup Network Europe essentially was started at the end of November as a physical events business in Dublin. And obviously something called COVID-19 happened. So now we're focusing on online events. We had one about 3 or 4 months ago for Irish startups. This is the second one, and it's going really, really well. We've met a lot of great people online. And really looking forward to today's event. Cindy, maybe you can talk about Hubspot for startups.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Cindy, and I head up the UKI partnerships at Hubspot for Startups. So Hubspot for Startup is a program where we partner with accelerators, incubators, and VCs, but also co-working spaces and startup communities to offer startup-friendly pricings for their communities, but also offer educational resources that can help those startups grow and fill out the gaps in any of the accelerators, incubators, or VCs programs.
Great. And our plan for today is very simple. We're going to have a 10-minute presentation by Hidai Degani about bad customer experience and the changing hat phenomena. And then we're going to have a 40-minute panel discussion between 6 different people involved in startups. Blaine Doyle, he's the CEO and founder of Checkdora and GlowDX. They have operations in Ireland and Mexico. Blaine, maybe you can introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Adam. Nice to meet everyone. As Adam mentioned, I am the CEO of GlowDX and Checkdora. Basically, we do direct-to-consumer testing in Latin America, right now focused on COVID-19. But previously, we were also in the women's health and sexual health space. And can't wait to tell you a little bit about that later on.
Yeah. And then we have Cindy. Cindy's actually based in Sweden right now. I'm from Ireland, but I'm in Turin in Italy. Damien.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Damien Hansen. I'm a co-founder of a product called Circle Loop, which is a cloud-based phone system for small businesses. As you may tell with my accent, I'm not based in Ireland. We're based near Manchester in the northwest, but we're set to launch in the Irish market tomorrow. So, yeah, looking forward to sharing a little bit more as we go through the panel discussion later.
Yeah, and best of luck with that, Damien. And Finn, you're from Frontline Ventures.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks for having me on, Adam. Yeah, so I'm from Frontline Ventures, European-based venture capital fund with an office in Dublin, London, and in the US. So we do early-stage software investments, anywhere from €250,000 up to €3 million. And one of the panelists, Wendy, is very luckily for us, a portfolio company of ours. So looking forward to the discussion on sort of do's and don'ts of startups and fundraising.
And then Johnny.
Thanks very much. Nice to see you all this evening. My name is Johnny Cosgrove. I'm the co-founder at Meeting Room. We make virtual reality meeting rooms that allow enterprise teams to collaborate in a more physical way while separated. So think getting around the table, working on a whiteboard together, all done wearing a VR headset and focusing on solving real world problems. We focus mainly on working with large enterprises. Specifically, we work with brands who are looking to work from innovation to deployment to actually scaling up within the business. And looking forward to sharing and listening a fair bit today. Thanks for putting it together, Adam.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you. And Wendy.
Thanks, Adam, for having me on. Yeah, my name is Wendy. My company is Teach Cloud. It's an early years management system for childcare services. So we help them reduce their paperwork and comply with regulations. And as Finn said, Frontline invested in Teach Cloud in early 2020.
Yeah, and what I like about the panel discussion format actually is there's a lot of events in Ireland and it's just a presentation. The presentation can be good or not good. The great thing about a panel is you have 6 different opinions, disagreements, a bit of fun. I did it back in November in Ireland. It worked out really well and I think it's going to work out well today online. And then following the panel discussion, we're actually going to the best part of the event, which is the 30-minute audience Q&A. So we're actually going to ask you questions that you could answer because we know most of you are actually founders, CEOs of startups. We've done most of the invitations by email only. So we know that's the typical profile. And also if you have questions for us, for everyone with different experiences, please feel free to ask them in either the chat box when we open it up or by microphone as well. And please note, this is a Zoom meeting. We think this is much better than a Zoom panel format where only the speakers talk. So just while the panel discussion is on, please make sure your microphone is off. And if you have any questions, maybe send it to me first. We'll see how things go really with that. So we're going to start with Hidai. Hidai is actually, he's going to talk about bad customer experience and the changing hat phenomena. Hidai is actually originally from Israel, but he's lived in a lot of different places. He's a founder of OH Stegany Consultants. And Hidai, maybe you can actually talk about this topic. I'll stop sharing the screen now so we can focus.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody, thanks, Adam.
Yeah.
Indeed, so yes, a little bit of quick info to continue there. Been in lots of places. My funny, strange name is from Israel, but it's strange over there as well. It's Hidai Degani. Left Israel 10 years ago, started relocating in Europe 5 times to those places, every time different company, different things. Industry-wise, I was working e-commerce, e-gaming, fintech, loyalty, and others. Companies, startups, the good old garage to people, innovation incubation, scale-ups, SMEs, and large corporates. In roles, I've done plenty of things from user experience, product development, product management, CRM, data, ultimately customer experience in a digital way, plus connected to the offline world is the main thing I've been doing for my career. And I've seen it, the good, the bad, and the ugly in lots of forms, different places, different sizes. And what I do today, I'm in Ireland for the last 2 years. I was in Galway first on the west, very rainy. Moved to the east in Dublin, slightly less. And I have my own consultancy. I work as an advisor, mentor, consultant, non-exec director, speaker in those areas, mainly about digital and customer experience, and help companies understand those elements and actually use them to do better business in general. That's a little bit about myself. And what I'd like to talk about is that phenomena, which I mentioned, what's happening in customer experience. The reality is, and I'm going to see the poll, which I thought about doing, who's experiencing good or bad, because I know the answer. Sadly, majority of customer experiences suck. Most of the products we use, we hate. Most of the emails we get, we hate. Most of the stuff experience is not great. We don't like it. We're all consumers. Each one of us is a consumer. By definition, we cannot not be consumers. We cannot not be customers because by definition, B2B or B2C, we are using stuff all the time on our phone, on our desktop, in the supermarket. So we have experience stuff, and we don't like it. We really feel bad. We're very vocal about it. We curse it. We swear at it. We delete the app. We answer stuff on the email. So we're never going to use that crap. And then a funny thing's happening because it still keeps on happening. So if we all hate it, why does it keep on happening? So I like to call it that's a changing hot phenomena, because then we go to work, one cool startup or cool company, and then we do exactly the same thing to other people, which are not us, because now we're the big boss. We're the product manager, the CEO, the founder. And then we do exactly the same thing, which 5 minutes ago we hated. And we said, oh my God, that's crazy. And then we just changed. Something crazy is happening in our head. We forget about it. And now let's monetize. Let's bombard emails. Let's get more money. Let's subscribe. Let's put pop-ups. All the stuff we really hate, and we hated 5 minutes ago, then we do. And for me, it's a crazy phenomenon, which I've been seeing throughout my career. And it still keeps on happening. I'll tell you an example from our current times. COVID-19, again, still happening. But one phenomenon, at least of it, you probably remember, and luckily it ended. Remember at the beginning that you got all the emails from all the CEOs in the world that were really, really worried about your well-being. Hi, Hidai, I'm CEO of company XYZ. How are you doing this tough time? I don't know, who are you? I never remember even subscribe to that, unsubscribe. Hi, Hidai, I'm really worried about you. Do you know we're doing a special thing? We're upping the prices. Oh, really? Delete, unsubscribe, or et cetera, et cetera. So it was a crazy thing because we all laughed at it. The whole LinkedIn memes start happening, shitty email, really ridiculous email, sorry, my French. It's all keep on going. As we were laughing at it, we kept on sending those emails. So again, it's a good example of, we know it's ridiculous, we know it's probably not working, it's probably doing damage to our customers and our company, yet we all kept on sending those emails because they're doing it. Surely we must do the same. So that's one example. And half of it is because of just copying. We all do it, therefore we need to do it. And it's a strong phenomenon of copying others, go with the herd, instead of just, is it really the right thing to do? That was one. I think, Adam, you and I mentioned, talks about emails. I know you have a few terrible examples of yourself of emails you got. And,
Great. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, it's funny. So I did a webinar on Saturday for a university in Ireland. And I sent 200 WhatsApps afterward. It took a long time, but I did it. And the first 100, I didn't get, I think I got one response or maybe two out of 100 WhatsApps, because I was like, hi, thanks for coming. Do you want to have a meeting? So, you know, book your meeting here. And then I had 4 or 5 other links, and I thought it was good. I was in a rush, but it looked so spammy when I looked at it afterwards. So the next day when I sent another 100 WhatsApps, and this was on Sunday, I actually did a much more simple message. Hi, thanks for coming to the webinar. No link. Then a second message, would you like me to set up a meeting with you in the university? So I had no link in these messages, and I think I got maybe 20 responses. And it was really when I looked at it on my phone and I compared the 2 messages, wow, why did I do this thing when I know I hate it? But you know, it's also the same with websites. I work with universities. So many universities do ads, they send the person to the website and there's like 100 different links. It's much better to have a kind of landing page where it just focuses on one thing, there's one form to fill in, and that's it. But even though we read about this, we keep making this mistake, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's what I said. When I looked at it later on, you saw something totally different, right? So the thing is, sometimes we're caught in the moment, we're in a rush. Like I said, I was in a rush, I had to do it quickly, there's a deadline. We gotta send those emails, it's Friday night, let's bombard, we gotta do it. We promised the CEO, we promised the investor, we promised all of that. Then we do it and say, oh my God, then you look at your own email and say, oh my God, was that really being sent? And then you cannot retrieve those. Emails being sent, that's it, they're there. And I got yesterday, thank you very much, participant name, literally yesterday. And then I got emails from really good companies, subject line empty, no subject, now with the link, now. So even basic UA, even just checking, under eye. We all know what we need to do. Nothing I will tell you or Adam told you now is rocket science. No one needs to know that. And the Harvard website is another example. Again, Harvard, the best name education. People pay tons of money. Look at that website. It's a desktop website with literally 500 links there. Menu drop downs, like the internet is 10 years old, like 10 years backwards in time. No one does it. Are you checking websites? Any of you go to websites, start clicking around? I wonder what this drop down does. No, we do it on the phone. 5 seconds, 1 second, 3 seconds, 5 second maximum. You don't find it, you're off. Your customers are not different. None of us is different. We don't have time, don't have attention span. If you don't find information very, very quickly, we're not going to do it. So it's something we all know. We don't even have to be taught yet, because of pressure, because of something we need to do, because everybody's doing it. We just kind of get into the habit or make a mistake and not thinking, and then go and do that. Another example, you might say, you know what, it's OIDA, it's corporates, it's the big corporates, we are startups, we're great, we think about customer centricity, it's amazing. Yeah, I think we all want to believe that, and I've been there myself. Sadly, it's not really the case. You see, look at startups, it will take you 5 pages, I sometimes work with them and need to really drill down to the about us or the services, and then to actually find, you know what, now I understand. But if I don't have to do it, I would not be doing it. So it's something that sadly, it's spread across all industries, or every size. It's really about thinking from the customer point of view. Another example, which startups I see a lot happening, is you think about a great product, and it's an app or website or something. It's amazing, and it's so cool, and there's the money shot that you show the investors. This is what it's going to be like. And you get the money based on it, all of that. And then you start developing, and the first thing you see, registration form. Oh my God, who is excited about the registration form? You don't even have to ask, no one will. It's the most boring, annoying activity we ever have to do. So give me your name and your surname and email, type it again, and a password. No, strong password. No, stronger password. So mother's maiden name, where you come from, and what your preference. I didn't do anything. I want to see the product. I don't even know what I'm doing. Why would I give you all this information, which I know is going to be sent all over the world? Why? You show me the money shot in the ad. Like Adam said, there's ads, there's cool stuff. Show me the cool stuff. No registration. And it's failed, and I forgot my password. And then the whole experience is that I hate it. Delete the app. That's it. I'm gone. That's it. I will never check that app or service again. So we all know it. We all hate it. However, someone tells us we need data. We must get the data from the user straight away so we can monetize it, of course, the holy grail. But you're not going to monetize it now. You're not going to get data now. Do you really need to ask the customers now, at the moment? Do you need to really ask them and force it before they go and see the app, the beautiful app you spend all the time and all the developers to tweak and check and product market fit, all of that. Let them get there, for example. Do you really need to do that? And sometimes, no, we just go and do it. I've seen many startups as we speak last month, registration form. I said, I don't want to see that. Put it in the bin. Show me, get the users to the money, give them something nice there. keep them. We're fighting for engagement and for every second of attention. Don't hold back for a second. So that's kind of examples which are spread everywhere. Doesn't matter which size you are, what you do. It just happens a lot for multiple reasons. With the pressure, we're all under pressure, especially startups, whatever one to monetize, to price. But the thing is, as human beings, we all know it. We can smell it. We smell desperation. We smell someone is about to up the price. We smell someone is up for your data. We smell the subscribe. We know exactly how it looks. When Adam said before, it felt spammy. We recognize spam like that. We know if it says, Adam, you mentioned, dear sir, madam. We know exactly what's going to come after that. They can even put your name in the email. We know what is going to come. We all have very, very good senses to that. We smell it. But sometimes we don't listen to that because we want to believe, no, it's okay. Our customers are better. They will spend hours on the website. They will spend and they will find it. And we know they don't mind, but they do. We know it very well in the gut that it's the wrong thing to do, but sometimes the circumstances kind of force us. That's kind of the phenomenon.
Yeah, and how do you avoid it? So if you're building an app, how would you avoid it? What advice would you give to people to actually try see the experience through the eyes of the customer?
Yeah, and that's I don't promise the tough questions. Okay, it's all tough. What can you do to avoid it? It's actually quite simple because we all know the stuff. We all know the theory. I don't need to tell you customer experience. We all know it. We all see it. We know good and bad. I'm saying one thing. It's quite simple. Stop and think. Before you do it, just stop, pause, and think. And ask one question. Will I, on the other side of that email or message or pop-up, will I be liking that? Will my customers or myself, even you yourself, is it a good thing to do? How would I respond to that? And honestly, answer that question. If the answer is still yes, go for it. The answer is no, pause. Stop before you do. Don't copy anyone else, just think and honestly answer that question. And I do believe if you stick to that, ultimately, there are better results. So all I'm saying is stop and think is my only recommendation. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Shaddai. So guys, we're going to move on to the panel discussion now, and our first person is Blaine. Now, Blaine, you're actually in Kilkenny at the moment, I believe, but you normally do business in Mexico. So I suppose my question is, your company at the moment in Mexico is helping to improve COVID-19 testing. So how has living in Mexico changed your life and the way you do business?
Sure. So, I mean, even I think in general, just travel alone has been, I suppose, even a crazy amount of time spent on that, and a crazy amount of, I suppose, insights got from that, from my business. Like I was mentioning before we opened it up to everyone, the little, I suppose, trip I made to Honduras that was almost 5 years ago now, which was actually the first time I was ever outside of Europe. So you can imagine the culture shock of that alone, and just kind of the insights from that trip, which was kind of a fact-finding mission to kind of learn a little bit more about diagnostics and clinics in Latin America. And I ended up in a clinic with dengue fever, which was a bit more insights than I was looking for, but I suppose definitely was kind of the motivational factor behind this. But I think just traveling alone, and I mean, just even, I suppose, running a business from here in Kilkenny right now, which is now in Mexico, I think the biggest thing has just been seeing how interconnected the world is right now, and how much, I suppose, one thing and one side of the world affects the other, which is now very evident in the last 6 months. And I think from that, I think one of the biggest things is really kind of, I suppose, democratizing innovation. And I think that's one of the big things that will come from this whole COVID-19 situation is kind of innovation is now going to reach a lot more of the countries which, you know, I suppose historically it would not have, or would have kind of reached a little bit later down the timeline. And I'm really seeing that in Mexico and in Colombia, Brazil, and kind of more Latin American countries right now, where healthcare is really, really taking, you know, strides and bounds, and, you know, regulatory authorities are beginning to open up a little bit and running programs similar to the emergency use authorization program that the FDA is doing. And I think that's just enabling healthcare to just, you know, it's basically on steroids right now in Mexico, to kind of get a hold of this this pandemic. And I think, you know, from that perspective that this traveling is providing me, I think one of the big things, apart from that open innovation, is also the responsibility. Because I think founders you know, in Europe, the US, and in all parts of the world, I think have a lot of responsibility because, you know, we're the ones that are bringing this new innovation, this new perspective, this new way of doing business, or whatever that, you know, piece of technology might be to this market. And I think that's, you know, something that we really need to I suppose, yeah, really think about when we're doing so, because right now, you know, 6 months ago, I was trying to and basically building a women's health brand to basically democratize access to certain diagnostic tests in Mexico. And now we're on the front line with COVID-19 and basically keeping companies afloat in Mexico by providing testing services and keeping them open. So I think, you know, just on this kind of globalization thing, I think we all need to really, you know, push the boundaries and make sure that we're bringing kind of, you know, taking the most out of that responsibility that we have to, I suppose, move the needle a little bit and make the world a little bit of a better place.
And is there anything you see in Mexico that could be brought to Ireland in terms of business, something better, or vice versa?
Definitely better tequila.
Yeah.
But apart from that, I think definitely in terms of, I suppose, really, I think Mexico is very interesting from the perspective of it's definitely underutilized, I would say, right now as a manufacturing hub. And there's even a lot of even good Irish people out there who are running manufacturing operations for various different US multinationals. I think that's something that's undertapped right now and can definitely be looked at in the future as definitely, you know, an alternative, because, you know, let's be real here, supply chains were pretty much rocked around the world for the last 6 months. I think Mexico is a very interesting and, you know, an interesting position that it could really take a lot of the current market from Asia in terms of that perspective. So I think that's definitely something for the future that Mexico can do. And I mean, I think it's also an interesting market from the perspective of an export market for Ireland, because it's such a big population. And there is definitely different market dynamics that we're probably not used to in Ireland, but at the same time, I think it's definitely, you know, I've gone there, you know, learned what it is to do business in Mexico. And I think there's definitely opportunities there for technologies, given the size of the market.
Yeah, and for the other panelists, I know either you are not from Ireland and you're living in Ireland, or you are Irish and some of you have lived abroad before. Have you got any good lessons from doing that?
I think I can jump in. So I think when you move countries, you learn a lot because you need to adapt to a new culture, first of all, a different style of working. I moved when I was very young, so I was only 20 when I left Sweden, and I went to Dublin, and during my years, I also spent some time in both Paris, Barcelona, and London. And I think one of the really big learnings that I had from having lived abroad now for almost 11 years is that you need to be able to be adaptable. That's like the key thing. If I would go in, I'm Swedish myself, if I would go in with my Nordic aura and being like, almost like what would be seen as rude, as we are a bit cold here in Scandinavia, it wouldn't really work out. It would really damage the relationships I have with clients, with partners, with employers, employees, and so on. So I think being adaptable is one of the most, like the biggest lessons that I've learned from moving countries, living abroad, and working with different cultures. So working now in Hubspot and also being in multinational companies like Google and also in a startup, you need to be able to adapt yourself to the different people you're working with. Sometimes you might end up in a team where you're 25 different nationalities and you need to cooperate together. So I think my two biggest lessons is to constantly be adaptable, constantly be humble, and also to be able to understand and try to learn more from those people that you meet along the way. Because the lessons I've learned from, for example, colleagues from Azerbaijan or colleagues from Ireland, they're lessons that I will bring with me both in my career, but also in my personal life. So I think for sure being adaptable is a key learning for me, having lived abroad for almost 11 years now.
Yeah, and Finn, actually, we both lived in Washington, D.C., except in different years. During your summer there a few years ago, was there any great lesson you learned in terms of business?
Yeah, I suppose like the way Americans do business is very different to how most people in the world do business. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is kind of up to you and from your point of view to judge. But you know, I think the one thing I kind of picked up on in DC is like, you know, the people who get shit done are the people who ask for it. And like you see these kind of operators floating around, and it's very much so a city of like trading favors and, you know, moving things forward. So I think that was probably one aspect of, I think in European business, particularly in Europe, like that I see now in my current job, is like often people are probably more reticent about just like asking for something, or like there's always a preamble to like any conversation where someone will be like, hey, how's your summer? God, COVID's awful. While an American will just be like, I want this from you. Like, you can either give it to me or you can not give it to me. But like, it's fine either way. But there's none of this kind of nonsense of like every time they contact you being like, hey, how's the weather? How's COVID? How's your family? It's just like, what do you want? Tell me it, and I'll do it or won't do it. And it's like, I think it's kind of surprising that not having that friction, even though it's very small, actually adds it up consistently over so many, like hundreds or thousands of interactions, and actually makes doing business in Europe much more difficult because people are a little bit less direct. Sorry, that was a long answer to a very brief question.
No, it's a good one, actually. No, I work in sales, so yeah, you get a lot more Americans being direct, which it's positive and negative. At least you get to the point quicker. Cindy, we actually had a question as well for you. So you work in HubSpot. I know HubSpot has hired a lot of people recently. I suppose in times of COVID-19, do you think for startups it's a challenge or an opportunity to hire?
I actually think it's a great opportunity to hire right now and to source great talent at the moment. So I think especially if you look in Dublin with all the big tech giants like Google, Facebook, HubSpot, with good offers, like good benefits and everything, people are directly drawn to that. And a lot of startups, they try to kind of attract talent from these companies, especially looking at software engineers or salespeople. So they're trying to attract those people into their startups. And that would have been harder like before COVID, because they have to compete with these like really big players where they might not be able to offer the same thing. They might not have the same kind of bandwidth to offer the same pays or the same benefits and so on. But now looking at it, a lot of people are leaving their jobs. A lot of people have been laid off. And there's actually now a market where startups can really benefit to look into that talent and really attract that talent. I'd say one thing, coming from a startup myself and having, as a lot of the founders on the call know, when you're in a startup, even though you're hired to do one thing, you're everything. So strategy to operations to HR to recruiting. And one thing I really found that was important, and that is more important, especially now that we've been remote for so long and people see that it's working, it's that type of flexibility. So potential talent is actually not maybe looking for all the benefits, the pays and everything that the big corporations might be able to offer. They're actually looking for flexibility. And one thing to really keep in mind is, even though it's very scrappy at the beginning with a startup, you need to make sure that you're giving them full autonomy to ensure that they grow within the company and that they be a part of the journey. And one thing that I found was really important, and that a lot of candidates actually asked me when I was recruiting for the startup I was with, was around the tasks day to day. So removing mundane tasks, such as working in spreadsheets or having to update several docs every day, like removing that and kind of automating that will also lead to like the satisfaction of the potential talent that you hire. So I think that there's a couple of aspects to look at. There's definitely an opportunity, but the offer that you put out there has to be solid as well. And I think looking at flexibility, it's going to be a huge thing going forward. And also making sure you have that autonomy and that you let go off certain tasks and so on. But definitely see a huge opportunity, and I think that, you know, the startup community is something that is very very appealing to a lot of people. Like, a lot of people want to go into startups, they want to be part of something, they want to be a part of the journey. So it's also about painting that picture for the potential candidates. So definitely think there's a lot of potential at the moment.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe Wendy, Johnny, Damien, you might have some input on whether or not you'd be open to actually hiring someone on a full-time basis, but they would work from home on a full-time basis. Do you prefer to still be with someone physically, or is virtual okay?
I can jump in on that if you like, Adam. Yeah, I think, I mean, I guess a point of view from, as I say, northwest of England, we've carried on hiring during sort of lockdown restrictions here in the UK. I think we've added about 13 new members into our team that actually we've never met. We've interviewed you know, via video tools such as Zoom. We've onboarded through tools such as Zoom, and we've, you know, brought them up to speed with our products and capabilities in this way. I think that, you know, that as a result of that, I have to say it's worked really well. You know, as a founder of the business, I found if you'd have asked me, you know, 4 or 5 months ago, would that even be possible, I would have said absolutely not. But I think clearly we're not working in a normal way anymore. So I think it throws up for us the opportunity for hiring in many locales all around the world, as you know, for us, as long as people and our teams are productive and you know, ultimately are getting on with what we would expect them to do. If they were in an office with us, then we're more than happy with it. So you know, the future of working remotely and working from home is something that's going to have changed dramatically for a long time to come. So we've personally not had any major challenges with it.
Yeah, and Johnny, I know you work with virtual meeting rooms. Do you find people in general are more productive or less productive, or just as productive when they're working from home?
When it's planned, it can be more productive, or it can be whatever, you know, like any strategy. If you have some execution behind it, it'll work. If you're thrown into something for the last 6 months and take away certain things like childcare and the ability to go outside, it's survival. So I think that when it's your choice, absolutely. Like, we're a fully locationless team, not by evangelism, but by the fact that we all like the amount of work we can get done, whilst also having families and doing all those important things that, you know, usually startups are not allowed to. Not something we buy into. It's very much a case of work, get the outputs done. And if you're still measuring by hours, that's probably one of the big things that'll come out of this from a behavior change point of view. But just because COVID's happened doesn't mean we're all turning remote overnight. I think the biggest driver that's going to come from this, but on both sides of the aisle, from the employee and the employer point of view, is that it's going to be different strokes for different folks. That's the same with everything. But I would strongly believe it's going to go towards more of a hybrid point of view, where you're still going to see your team. One point we founded in 2017, I met my founders for the first time, all of us in the room, in January of this year. Good timing, because I'm not going to see them for a while yet, just in terms of, you know, planning and business contingency. But the short answer again is, it just depends. You're going to still see people face to face. I make virtual meeting rooms which let people collaborate. I still believe that you're going to see your team face to face. I'm not, you know, I don't think people are going to lock themselves in VR or video conferencing all day long and enjoy their work. So making sure you actually have make value of those points over time. But from a hiring point of view, if you're not looking at that as a hiring strategy, it's probably going to be difficult over the next 6 to 12 months if you're working globally.
And Wendy, actually, I know you sell a software as a service, really. Are people a lot more open nowadays to having online meetings?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, before COVID-19, we were doing Zoom demos, and then a lot of people didn't know what Zoom was, or you'd have to call them and then like talk them how to actually join Zoom and then do the demo for the software. So now, yeah, they're definitely more au fait with it, and we're going to keep going that way. Like, I've never done in-person demos, to be honest, and definitely like on the remote, I just hired a customer success person. Finn actually helped with the interview process, and we had, I think it was over 500 applications to that. So there's a lot of people definitely looking for work now, and it's been a really good experience so far. And I think when people are working remotely, the interview process is a bit different, because you're really looking for someone that you can like have a lot of confidence in. And they know that as well. So there's a bit of responsibility there. So they really want to prove themselves, but there's also the fear that they'll just be kind of like lying in bed all day or whatever. So, you have to have a bit of structure too.
Yeah, a good way to track their performance, I suppose. And Damien, on that point, I know you're launching in Ireland this week. Maybe you can tell us a bit about why you think calls are so good for sales, because I know a lot of great startups, they have a great product, they have a great service, but they just email. And as we know, most people never actually open emails in the first place, let alone read it. So why would you say calls are better?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Adam. Yeah. I think I guess just taking a step back per my introduction, I guess the sort of industry we're taking on is one that's not particularly new. Voice and telephony has been around for decades, and clearly the traditional giants of said industries have really in the main got a stronghold in terms of still charging broadly what they like. They sort of have monopolies that they've held on for some time. So as a tech business, where the word challenger is used quite a lot in lots of different sectors these days, and I think we've kind of gone after a really boring industry in trying to challenge that traditional telecom space with some new digital thinking. So I think the reality in terms of voice for a lot of businesses is that it might not be quite relevant. So depending on the sector or the industry that the business actually operates in, voice might not be the primary communication channel. Clearly it's heavily used from a B2B perspective, service orientated industries as well, in terms of where the spoken form is much more powerful than a written form. We see that quite often, particularly in marketing, digital agencies, creative industries. They often have layers and layers of account management where they're speaking to customers, and the speed of telephony for them is really powerful. I think we've obviously as a business been operational for about 4 years now, and for us, we've been more than doubling our business year on year since we started. I think the pandemic and the lockdown situation has obviously made the penny drop for a lot of businesses to using digital communication tools. So we touched on things like Zoom that we're using now, of course, but the desk phone is fundamentally dead, in my opinion. The amount of businesses now around the world that were caught out really by having phone numbers and phones on the desk that they could no longer sit behind or have access to was a real turning point. So the penny, without a doubt, has absolutely dropped for those businesses, and application-based communications is very much sort of the way forward. So, I guess fundamentally what Circle Loop does, it puts the power of business telephony inside apps on desktop and mobile devices, so you can make and receive calls from your landline numbers wherever you happen to be, anywhere around the world where you've got connectivity. It's as simple as that, really. I suppose the sales benefits that brings, you could kind of say, so what? I mean, services like Skype have been around for 10 years plus as well, but actually packaging it into a full feature business phone system with call recording, voicemail transcription, everything's instantly provisioned live everything's just sort of instantly provisioned on a per user basis straight away. The ultimate sales benefits we see for a lot of our customers, and over 5,000 now in the UK, growing very quickly, and we hope now launching in Ireland, many more in Ireland as well. The professional angle is one that we see our clients really leverage towards. So the ability to look professional by having not maybe just one phone number where customers can contact them or they can contact customers on, but in many cases a lot different numbers to actually look local to the audience they're trying to speak to, but on a global basis. So we can provision numbers now in about 40 countries around the world. So you could be based in Dublin, you could have a number in Manchester, London in the UK, in New York, in Dubai, in Sydney, but actually you could just be a business working from a shared hot desk environment 2 days a week and 3 days a week back at home. But from the outside looking in, any business looking to deal with your company looks like you've got offices all around the world and that you're a much bigger business than perhaps you are. So I think that inbound ability to look much more professional and larger is a really important point. I think the other side to it is never missing a call, because of the way we built the software in terms of Circle Loop system. You can wire it up to other software tools that you use, so that actually all of your other productivity tools within your business are completely ingrained together. So if I miss a call on Circle Loop, I get a notification off Circle Loop via an email and a push notification to the mobile app. I've also set up a Slack integration, so I get a notification in Slack. But actually, we work closely with other SaaS tools, in particular CRM. So we have a very close working relationship with HubSpot. We've weaved the telephony phone system inside these other products you use, so you can make and receive calls from those other software products that you're used to using. And all of those interactions, both inbound and outbound, from a calling perspective, are automatically logged inside CRM. So for typically lazy commercial and sales people, we don't want to log inside CRM that we've made a call today and to who it was and how the call went. Circle Loop takes that pain away for you because it does it automatically. It squirts a copy of the call recording inside there, the duration of the call, your contact of who you've made contact with, etc. So really what we're seeing is that deep integration with other tools, it really drives more and more sales productivity and efficiency. So hopefully that gives you my view of the benefits from a sales point of view.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I actually worked in an Irish startup called iHeed about 2 years ago. And the way they combined phone calls with actually the speed of contacting lead was incredible. So we would actually receive an inquiry, it would come into the CRM, and we would contact them not within 1 day, not within 4 hours, but within 5 minutes. Sounds very strange. I was contacting doctors about courses. So imagine you're a doctor, you're extremely busy, you have 5 minutes to actually read about a course, and you inquire about it. What happened was amazing. The doctors were free at that time. We had an amazing conversation because they were on the page as I was speaking to them. And that beats anything I've ever seen on email or WhatsApp or anything like that. And I think by doing that tactic, a lot of startups see their sales double, quadruple, even go up by 6 or 7 times. And it sounds mad, but it does happen if you use calls in the right way.
Yeah, sure. I think we've kind of been a victim of our own success, I guess, with the growth of our product, in that we've toyed with, do we put live chat into the product, and can we deflect customers with automated answers to questions that they may have? And while some of that's really useful out of hours on a 24/7 basis, perhaps at weekends in particular, we see much greater conversion ourselves by making ourselves accessible on the phone to our own customers. I mean, it sounds ridiculous to even say, given we are a phone product, but we're our own case too in that regard. And as much as the world loves automation, AI, machine learning technologies, etc., actually, in a lot of cases, people really value just being able to speak and have a conversation. So in today's technology world, we're seeing great growth from people wanting to still get hold of that, but in a more modern way.
Yeah, thank you. And Finn, you work for Frontline Ventures as a principal. What bad advice do you see given most to Irish startups when they're looking for funding?
I think it's very hard to. There's lots of bad advice, and sometimes good advice for one person is bad advice for another. And I think that's probably the hardest thing. That's probably the hardest thing that I'm not gonna just rag on anyone who advises startups, because I think the problem with I've seen with most advice is someone has heard something or seen something happen that was relevant or was effective for a company that they had worked with in the past, or a friend who'd been in the company, and then they try to take that same advice and apply it to a completely different situation or a completely different company. And that's generally the issue I've seen with fundraising advice from most people. Is it's something that works for one person but doesn't work for everyone else, because at the end of the day, fundraising is sales. You're basically, when you're selling to customers, you're selling your product. When you're selling to investors, you're selling equity, and all you're doing is just trying to figure out you're trying to figure out what the value proposition is to your customers. And the value proposition to your customers is when you're just getting going and you're asking a friend that runs a business to try your product, they're not doing it because they think your product's amazing and they want to get involved. They're probably doing it because they're your friend and they're willing to try it out. Similarly, like friends and family rounds and being able to get money from people you know really well. Like they're not normally investing because they're super excited about the product and what you're doing. They're investing because they like you, and like they want to support you. So I would say like the way to avoid bad advice is not to be like, oh, everyone out there giving advice is stupid, or everyone out there giving advice is bad. It's just to think about like in what context they gave that advice and where they think you're at. Because fundraising, like right now, and again, it's a sales process and it's more, it's becoming more professionalized by the day. And I think companies that don't take a very systematic approach to fundraising and that don't actually go out and like sense check their messaging with people, figure out what their value proposition is for investors, figure out what type of investor is particularly well suited to their company. Like, it's like I sometimes have conversations with startups when they're like, oh, it's just impossible fundraising now. And I'm like, how many investors have you spoken to? And they'll be like, oh, I've spoken to like 10. And I'm just like, are you insane? You literally need to talk. Like if you were going out to try to sell $1 million worth of software and you'd only spoken to 10 customers and you were like, this is impossible. It just can't be done. I'm like, no, like you have to go and you have to beat the pavement and you have to be able to, you have to be able to figure out where, because like, a lot of the time when we pass on companies, it might not be because it might not be because the company itself is bad, but it's just like whether it was like we had just done a deal in a similar sector, or we were at a different period in our fund, or like the investor who you spoke to at the fund just wasn't that interested in what you were doing. Like there's loads of different ways that you can kind of approach fundraising, but like it's very much so a game of process and a game of numbers, where like you might get, some people get lucky and the first investor they meet writes them a check and that's great, but like you can't plan for being lucky. So I think that's the like counter to bad advice, is like it's about process and it's about driving numbers. And like if you run a good process and you meet 100 investors and you have a good proposition and are a good person, you will be able to raise money. Like that's just like there's so much capital. And I think this is like the thing that annoys founders sometimes, is like there's literally if you have a good idea and are a really good person, there is infinite money for you. Like not like $10 million, not like $100 million. If you're really good and you have a really good business, there's billions of dollars available to fund that business, which sounds crap because everyone's idea is great and everyone's a really good entrepreneur in their own eyes. But it's not that, like, you only get to that when you do that practice and you put in the time and you put in the numbers, and eventually you get to the point of figuring out what investors really want. So that'd be the kind of counter to bad advice. But like anything, like you can't raise money over Zoom, it's bullshit. Investors aren't it's like, oh, investors aren't interested in X sector, and it's like, no, like the investors you've spoken to just aren't interested in your sector. There are investors out there that probably invest in you. So it's I'm not kind of like, I'm not accusing people of being lazy, but I think fundraising is something that people don't invest the requisite amount of time in, and also that people forget that it is a skill. So like some people who are like, oh, they're just good at fundraising, like they're not really good, they're not a good entrepreneur. Like that's also complete bullshit. Like if you're not a good fundraiser, you're not, well, hang on, I'm going to caveat this again. You don't have to raise money to build a good business. You can build a good business, and like there's loads of good business. Like a cafe can be a good business. Stamp collection, like I don't even know if that's a real business, but like being a stamp collector could like maybe be a good business at some point in the future. But if you want to build a venture-backed business that has a potential outcome of like, making you generating hundreds of millions of dollars in returns for you and your investors, then fundraising is a skill that you will require or you will be replaced. So you better get good at it.
And I know you mentioned Wendy's company is in your portfolio. What did Wendy do right that other people could do?
What did Wendy do right? Wendy reached out. So I had heard about Wendy through a mutual friend of mine whose opinion I respect. And then I saw Wendy won, was it New Frontiers? It was like, was it the New Frontiers program that you won?
Maybe.
Anyway, maybe. There was some, basically, I had 2 reference points where I had seen Teach Cloud before. And then I heard from Wendy and I was like, oh, well, yeah, I've heard of that company before. I respect that person who said Wendy was a good entrepreneur. And like, then I met Wendy and Wendy was really impressive. So I was like primed, like, it's literally like, it's sales. It's not hard. Like I had already seen Wendy. I'd heard she was a good person from a trusted source. She reached out to me at like a reasonable time. And then and then when I met her, she was impressive. Like, it's not rocket, like it isn't, like it's not really rocket science, but it was that was the thing that was like impressive. And like, honestly, like being personally impressive and being able to tell a story and being able to say like why you're doing what you're doing is like, that's so, like, it's so important, because the big, like, again, like when you look at someone and you ask them in a meeting and you say, it's like, is this like, you know, if you're going to be successful and you're going to generate hundreds of millions of dollars and you're going to like have the best life ever, well, after you sell your company, while you're building the company, it can be a bit shit. But like, when you, like, if you want to get there, it's going to take like 10 years. And you kind of look at people and you say, it's like, is this really what you want to do for the next 10 years of your life? Like really. And if people have hesitation there, or they don't have a good narrative around that, you're just like, well, then what do you do? Like, what do you do? And like, you know, it's like we get pitched, every college student pitches, I'd say I get pitched at least 10, 15 times a year, LinkedIn for students. And like it's just like, you want to do that now because your friends can't get jobs. But like, the reason all your friends can't get jobs is because they're not bothered actually looking. Yeah. It's not that they need a better product. And then if you ask someone, it's like, do you really want to do this for the next 10 years? Most of them kind of fold and say no. So I think that was like Wendy's narrative story, the way she approached me, the way she had like put herself out there. That was kind of the most interesting thing, and why we decided to invest.
And out of interest, I'm a huge fan of Dragon's Den and Shark Tank. Do you think you can actually learn from them in terms of funding, or not?
No, it's very much so entertainment.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Like there are good companies that have raised money on Dragon's Den and Shark Tank, but like, like you don't want to be in a position like that where you have to raise money that way.
Yeah, I'd be terrified of making a mistake. So actually, Johnny, I suppose we're going to ask you a question. Failure, obviously failure can lead to success. Is there any particular failure you've made in recent years which you've learned from?
Yeah, well, I think if there's a difference in failures and making mistakes. If you're not making failures, you're probably not learning anything. If you're making mistakes, you're wasting your time and everyone else's time around you. So do take that to heart. For myself personally, thanks for the loaded question. I had some lovely soul searching for that one in the middle of a pandemic. I didn't need that. But no, I tried. I was thinking about it, and my first, I suppose, tech startup rather than company. I'd done 1 or 2 things before in events before that. It was a company called Wook. That was an absolutely brilliant business. It was growing like hotcakes. It was, I think some people on call I recognized from checking lists of being on at one point. It was an event management system for hospitality, for people to go in, and, you know, it was really just speeding up. I'd been a nightclub operator at the time, and I was trying to speed up, you know, not doing 1,000 clicks every single week, trying to make sure everyone was on a guest list. And it was fantastic, but we didn't execute. We got the product up. We got everything working really well. We had like 30,000 attendees who were all coming back every other week to all the different places who signed up. We didn't focus in on the customer and who we wanted the customer to be, as opposed to just saying, hey, there's a great cohort of people. And we got dragged in 20 different directions. And eventually, even though things were flying, I remember the week we actually just said, look, are we still enjoying this? And it was only 6 months or 18 months after actually building it all and putting it together. We weren't enjoying it anymore. We were getting dragged in too many places. And the biggest outtake of that was knowing when to quit, or knowing when to say, hey, we're not enjoying this. And that was probably the biggest learning from it. in terms of how that travels through to now, and I've done a few different things in between then. But for us, I found, say, even with Meeting Room, we had to make a few calls this year, like I'm sure a lot of people on this call did, which was, who's our customer going to be? Who do we want to focus in on? And we had a few trigger points that happened at the beginning of the year prior to COVID. We'd always wanted to work in enterprise and focus in on that. We got a few things that made us double down, and rather than opening our doors, so to speak, during, when everyone was looking for remote work tools and how to fix this problem right at the gate, it was a case of going, look, we're enterprise, we're locking the doors down, we're turning off our self-service, and we're focusing on a few things. So being able to learn for something that was really, really painful at the time, and it really was painful because things were flying. And sometimes it's hard to step back and look and say, is this something I want to spend the next few years at? Exactly as Finn was saying, that is something you need to understand. You could be doing this for the next 3, 7, 10 years, depending on your strategy. And there's nothing wrong with having an exit plan, but you want to show vision. And if I was to bring it back to looking at Wook again, we had a fantastic product, fantastic business, but we didn't start building out the team and look at the wider vision of where do we want to end this up? Where do we want to end this up? There's no problem finding your feet, but you got to have a direction and stick to it.
Brilliant. Yeah, actually, would you say then sort of a lack of a business model hurt your company, and that's what made you go back?
Weirdly enough, it was actually we were starting to make too much money in lots of different places, and we weren't sure which way to focus in on. And when you're 22, that's fantastic and it's great, but there's also just I personally, I hadn't got enough experience to understand, okay, look, go after the high scope, go after the stuff that's really going to scale. And it's not about product. I know everyone on this call loves product. It's not, I can almost say that with every assumption, but it's about distribution. It's about working out partnerships. It's about figuring out, say with my business now, we're an enterprise company. We're focusing in on certain clients. We work with brands, etc. on, and that's who we can work with. They're the people who really feel our pain, not just someone who wants, I think someone else said earlier on or before on the call, it's not about that 10%, oh, this is slightly better. It's a case of, especially right now, when think about it, the world is going into an interesting time, even yet to come from an economics point of view. And there's more money around, exactly as Finn said, than ever before. So it's a case of really figuring out how you're going to execute in on that and sticking to your guns. But again, sometimes too much opportunity and not focusing is what's going to kill you.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And then Wendy, we actually have our final question for you. What's one of the best, most worthwhile investments you've made in the past couple of years?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. The best investment I've ever made was just generally in myself, and whether that's like exercising or soft skills, I think you need to invest in yourself. And for me, it was definitely my education. So usually during a PhD, people don't start businesses like you're focusing on a PhD, but that's exactly what I did, and it was one of the best things I did. So when it comes down to investing in yourself, it's really all about learning. So it doesn't have to be a PhD, but being excited to learn new things, whether it's just joining this webinar today or you want to learn more about sales or entrepreneurship. And I'm a big believer in asking questions as well. So I like to be the least smartest person in the room, which to be honest is not that difficult, but it means then that like I'm always growing. Do you know what I mean? There was a guy, Derek Bach, I'm saying there was a guy, but like he was the president of Harvard, but like he said, if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. And like, I hate being ignorant. Like I always want to like know what's going on. And then once you have that information, it's like your ability to actually adapt, change, and like thrive in that environment. So like a quick story on this, I was doing a PhD, I was working 2 jobs, and I had this idea for Teach Cloud, and everyone was looking at me like I was crazy because I was talking about early years education, and people were like, don't early years educators just play with children? Like, why would they need software? So I was a broke student, and I basically just went on LinkedIn and started asking those questions, like, why are we not investing in early years education? Why is this problem of like compliance such a huge issue, and like no one really seems to care? And an investor saw that and was like, after one phone call, was like, okay, cool, how much do you need? And I was like, 50 grand. I should have said $1 million, but that's fine. I was naive. So I said 50 grand. He was like, oh, grand. Okay, no problem. And I was like, what? And that literally all came from like just being curious and having discussions like via LinkedIn, not even in person. So yeah, I think that's having those discussions, asking questions, and always being ready to learn it is really important.
Brilliant. No, thank you for that. So guys, what we're going to actually do now is I'm going to open up the chat. So you can ask questions either by chat in the chat box or by microphone. First, I actually have a question for the panelists and also everyone in the audience who may have experience. So I mentioned Circle Loop, UK company. It's launching this week in Ireland. Damien, you asked if you have a press release, where do you actually go in Ireland? Where's the best place to contact?
Yeah, I think again, probably rather naively, we've seen strong demand from Irish SMEs. Hence, we're launching into the market tomorrow. Yeah, sort of open question really. If there's any hints and tips as to where we should issue it, I guess trying to appeal to cloud tech savvy businesses, sort of any digital groups, in particular any editorial press that you think might be worth us throwing our press release to. I'd appreciate any input. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
I think I'll take the question, or I'll give a little bit of advice.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to solve your problem, but definitely, I mean, we just got an Irish Times publication for the 1.1 million euro round that we just closed about 2-3 weeks ago, and literally it was just from network. I think just getting a publication in Ireland is just a matter of hammering LinkedIn as hard as you can, and basically joining the dots, and eventually you'll get somewhere. I think. Yeah, just literally, it's more or less a relationships game, and it's just a matter of hammering the network.
Great. And guys, I actually have some polls ready. This worked really well in the last event. Just asking, where do your startups actually work? I know a lot of startups are based in Ireland at the moment. Mine would be too. But do you have a global vision to actually go somewhere else? Blaine, when you did you have a plan to originally just be in Ireland, or did it kind of happen that you went to Mexico?
Sure. So I mean, when we started the company, even though my little side trip to Honduras, we just, yeah, I mean, the plan was to kind of build things from Ireland and eventually be in Mexico. But I think after a while, it just found that really that you just need to be next to your customer. I mean, digital marketing is really an art, and trying to get that really tweaked for the B2C play that we have for the Mexican market. It just meant that we needed to just be in the market, operating there, and kind of understanding the customer from that perspective, and also kind of, I guess, engaging in the community, because with the kind of women's health, sexual health play, it's very much a community-based marketing in terms of building up the I suppose trust, and also kind of the credibility. It's healthcare at the end of the day, and kind of building relationships with clinicians, hospitals, associations, and just basically putting kind of boots on the ground with that kind of approach. Because again, I suppose healthcare with digital marketing in Latin America is still in quite its early days, and it's very cost effective, but at the same time it is one of those, I suppose, those more difficult verticals to try and convert in a market that's still in its kind of early days of adoption.
Yeah, thank you. And we have a couple of questions in the chat, actually. The first one is, what skills do you look most for when you're setting up a team? Maybe if someone from the panel can answer this.
It's like accounting, it depends. Yeah. No, but to give a slightly more useful answer, look, you got to figure out what you're trying to do for the next 6 to 18 months. You are getting married for a long time if you're setting up with other founders, but it's also looking about what skills you need for the overall business and what you need to help right now. And trying to look at the right now helps you really formulate, look, what are the jobs to be done, all those bits and pieces. But there's no golden ticket here to have to do it. But good spread of the basis is very good at the start, especially getting paying customers.
Yeah, and we actually we're doing a poll, very, very interesting results. So I'm just going to share it now. Is now actually an easier time to hire? So it's sort of 50-50, but we actually have more people, 60-40, I would say. We have more people saying it's easier to hire now. I guess there is just a bigger pool of talent. And then, yeah, we have another question now about how do you actually contact potential clients? Does anyone here actually use WhatsApp? So I did a webinar on Saturday, B2C, and I just found, compared to email, maybe an email is 1 out of 10, WhatsApp was 3 out of 10. I think calling is 10 out of 10, to be honest, but it was far more effective. And I haven't used it in Ireland yet in B2B, but does anyone use it in B2B?
Not in Ireland, but definitely in Mexico. WhatsApp is the holy grail. It's can get you a lot of traction. We've closed multiple different testing deals, upwards of 200K reoccurring revenue via WhatsApp. We've something even with 7 figures right now moving through WhatsApp, which is just madness.
Yeah. I had someone from Malaysia and Malaysian university, contact me the other day and say, "Hey, contact me on WhatsApp." It's the first time it happened in my job, but I know it's very normal in Latin America and the Middle East. If you got, let's say, before this event happens, you got a WhatsApp from me reminding you of the event, would you find it a bit intrusive coming from an Irish company, or would it be fine?
Is that directed back at me?
Yeah.
Sorry. No, I think I suppose really I'm in and out of the country for the last 5-6 years, so I'm kind of used to dealing in Latin America. But I think for me, SMS is a weird one for me, actually, because it's something that I only get from Bank of Ireland when I use my credit card in Mexico, or I don't know, something that's definitely just more of a service message, automated. Whereas I think WhatsApp is that little bit more personal. Again, I do, I would say even 60% of my business through WhatsApp, which is interesting, sending documents, getting things done. It's actually quite quick and easy, and you can move things around. There's probably, any given time, there's probably at least 10 groups on my phone, and yeah, we're jumping between them. So I definitely think, yeah, for sure, I think WhatsApp could be the way to go. I don't know if maybe I think, yeah, it probably is the way to go.
Yeah, I think if it's happening elsewhere, it'll happen in Ireland eventually. I've avoided it so far, when it comes to B2B, but it's getting there. So how are you financing your business? I think, yeah, most people so far are actually bootstrapping, like myself. I'll just share the results of that, Paul, there. I should actually ask the panelists, maybe Johnny and Johnny, did you bootstrap your own company, or did you look for investors yourself?
So we've bootstrapped, but we have taken support from Enterprise Ireland.
Yeah.
We change in the near future, but a lot of it is not about getting funding. The terrible sickness we've got. It's more a case of going, look, get some working capital to achieve some milestones. It doesn't have to be absolutely everything you want to get done, but you're trying to take some sniper shots, especially if you're early stage. And linked back to even with the last point around WhatsApp, and I suppose I'd widen it slightly to, creating somewhere that you own that no one else can get at your customers. That's something like, I know we're going through a pilot right now. We've had 4 months working with a Fortune 500 energy company. We haven't sent one email apart from 3 I had to do last week, which was to do with due diligence on something. So legal documents, send it the way that's regulated. But in terms of owning somewhere, it's not just WhatsApp. I do definitely agree with using WhatsApp. I think it's fantastic, and it's going to grow depending on where you're looking to. You got to find where people are living. But if you can, say, set up a Microsoft Teams or a Slack where you've got constant, if someone needs to ask you something, you're already there and living there anyway. It's not something you might forget to check, like an email. It happens. But those little fiefdoms are something you can own that your competitors can't touch and can't do anything about. So depending on what you're working with, doesn't matter if it's consumer or if it's business enterprise, you can really create some little moats around that just take advantage of it. Everyone likes being on their instant messaging these days.
Yeah, and actually I have a question. So I've got the Paul here. Maybe you guys can help me out a bit. So when I talk to the startup community in Ireland, I do notice there's a lot of mini communities, but maybe there's a lack of a big united community. That's just some feedback I've got, and I could be wrong on it. But then the big question is, if there is kind of a need for a stronger community, how do you connect them? I think it could be WhatsApp if you really filter people who go into the group, have everyone at the same level maybe, or from different industries. But it'd be interesting to hear your experience on that. Do you think a Facebook group could work? There are a few out there, or Slack.
That for me or for, sorry?
That's for you, yeah. I have to start.
Look,
yeah.
I built my first 2 businesses on Facebook groups, and they generated 6-figure revenues from a free, it was a free tool. It's still a free tool, but I stopped advertising once you hit 16% organic reach, and that was a long time ago. If you curate it the right way, it's brilliant, but I wouldn't just say go off and set up a group for the sake of it. If it fits for what you want to get done, especially right now, if it fits what you need for the next 6 months, focus on it. But like anything, it's going to be part of, there's a future work. It's not just Slack. It's not just the webinars. It's not just all these different bits and pieces that some people are only waking up to. It's a case of, what can you achieve with your current team size? And if you need to, back to your original question of funding, if you need to accelerate, and I say need, not just want, but if you need to accelerate it, then look at funding or financing. But if you're looking at just keeping connect with people, I 4 months ago, I didn't have an academy training program. Now I do. And it's, it's something else that we've built up, and it can make things an awful lot easier. There's something for that in probably every business on this call, but it's a case of how can you get people using your service so they can get value for the money they're hopefully spending with you.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, here's the final, Paul. It's a really big area. Where has your startup made its biggest mistake or miscalculation or failure, we could say? Actually, Damien, would you have any feedback on this? I know your company, it's a few years old now.
Yeah, I guess, just to paint the picture, we raised about 3 million sterling pre-revenue in the first 12 months of our business, but we'd done that off the back of a track record with another startup that we founded. We didn't need the money. I think there's some interesting points, I guess, on we didn't need the money, but we knew it would enable us to go faster towards what we knew was happening with the shift in digital communication. So we took the decision to go at that quite aggressively. It was a largely friends and family, high net worth investment round, but I think raising the money for us then created us a whole load of pressure. We probably didn't need that early in the business. So I think some of probably all of them things you're asking the failure to success, the market need, we probably not identified. We had the funds, but we're probably then running the risk of wasting them on things that probably weren't quite right because the price and the proposition of the product wasn't quite there. But, my rule of thumb is there's no right or wrong way, in my opinion, with any of this. It's to the point earlier that was made. I think it's all about how much tenacity and effort you have as a founder, in my case, a co-founder with a sort of a long-standing business partner, because, there's no overnight success situation with what you're working on. It's tough. It's a tough slog. And, I think the point was made on raising money in the first place. I think we'd fallen quite lucky in being able to raise quite a bit of money quite quickly early on for us, but the process now we're going through as we start to go through the gears of scaling up our business, we're at again talking to investors and trying to work out how do we go even faster, can we internationalize the business, and that ability to keep doing that and educate investors on what you're doing and what your business is getting to is a never-ending process. And fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of that resides on my lap as part of my remit as one of the co-founders of the business. But it is a never-ending. You've just got to be tenacious with how you see the opportunity growing for you as a business.
Yeah, and Cindy, I know you work with a lot of startups as well. We have the poll results right now, which actually surprised me because a lot of studies say the biggest failure of startups is no market need. Nobody's voted for that here. It's all about insufficient funds. Would that actually be right for Irish startups in your experience?
I'd say there's a bit of a mix there. So I think a lot of mistakes is that one of the biggest mistakes is that companies are not adaptable. They're not willing to change, which is also understandable in a way because a lot of the founders, they see their company as essentially their baby. And sometimes I think there's a bit of tunnel vision going on with the startups where they might not be able to see that the pricing is too high or that their processes is not right. They don't have a customer journey in mind. They don't know how to onboard their customer, especially for very technical products. And if you sit with a product for a long time and develop it, what you start seeing is that for you, it's not complex at all, but for the customer and the end user that's going to use it, is it too complex? What type of education will they need to be able to utilize that product to its full potential. So it's always about solving for the customer and making sure that you educate them and help them. And I think that's where the biggest problem lies. When it comes to investments, which I saw in the poll was a huge problem, I'd say that investments to kind of approach VCs, accelerators, and incubators, one thing you need to do is to have something organized. And I know it was mentioned before in the call, like you need to have, I think Finn talked about it, you need to have a process for fundraising. Like I often advise the startups, like when you start using the CRM, you should always have kind of a deals pipeline for your fundraising. What is the process from first call to actual investment? And what are the milestones along that way? So I'd say those are the two problems that I see. Fundraising sometimes, as Finn mentioned, it's all about having a process in place and being organized and being able to show that organization to potential investors.
Great, thank you.
I would add to that. I think for me, and you're right, it's a surprising answer, but I think it's an easy answer. Because it's easy to say it's the money. Money is an excuse to many things. The money will ultimately kill you. Ultimately. It's the, not the symptom, but not the disease. But the disease is, to exaggerate, is everything we said before. Not building the right product, all the below that is the right product market fit, marketing, business model. There's a question here on the, yeah, I will actually answer the question at the same time. It's about market, what's your modeling? What's your assumptions? If you apply the assumption on the market, what comes out of it? What's your engagement model? Users on board, users registered on board the funnel, CPA, cost per acquisition. Can you put marketing money to acquire registrations, active users, daily, monthly, weekly, whatever. Sales pipeline at some point later on. Everything. I think it's a lot more before you go to money. If you have all those things ready, Finn said it very nice. I liked his opinion. There's infinite money in the world. If you cannot get it, it's not because of the money. It's because you're not ready. Something is not ready yet. And it takes a lot of hard work and blood, sweat, and tears and iterations, and all of the founders here know it, and I know it, to nail it. But if you nail it, there is money out there for you. It's very, very, very hard to achieve, but technically, Finn said it, it's impossible. It's infinite to achieve. So I think it's all about nailing those engagement and metrics, proving what you got in your hand, whatever product or service is working. Any evidence of that gets you closer to a good product, a good model, good business. And you get funding for good business, you get money. So it's as simple and as hard as that, in my opinion. So I see many, many people jumping to, I tell them, what's your product? Tell me about how they're gonna get money. I'm not asking, what is your product? If you cannot, I'm saying, if you can't explain your product in 1 minute to my grandmother or my child, it's not good enough. It's not simple enough. So I don't even understand. The investor won't listen to you because you don't get anything what you're talking about. It's not about the money. The money will come later on, of course. But if you can't explain what is it in one word and eventually one ad, one thing on again, you're not ready. No one is going to give you money on that. So I think it's really basic and eventually money comes, is my approach to it.
Yeah, and Hidai, we actually have another question from you from Neha. How do we determine or gauge user experience in commodity products?
How do we check that if it's good for commodity? Same as anything else. I mean, is it check your metrics, see if you actually get people on the line. One thing I also say people usually forget, check your own stuff. Someone mentioned in the chats, experience is everything. We talk about experience from people on the phone. Damien mentioned that you provide customer experience. We talk about chats and bots and stuff and phone. The question is, let the people choose. Let your customers choose. If they want phone, give them phone. You mentioned divert or bust, don't. Let them choose. If the customer chooses, they're empowered. So see what you're actually offering and use what I said before. Do you like to be diverted to chatbots? No one likes it. If you want the person on the phone, give them person on the phone. If they want the bot, give them the bot. If they want FAQs, give them everything they want. Give them choice. You see where they go and you see where you are. Check your own product. Register. Some companies, some CEOs have not registered on their own products for years. As a result, no one really knows the onboarding process. Cindy mentioned onboarding. People mention other stuff. Check your own stuff. Usually, you don't do it. You build it, you forget about it, and years later, you see a lot of crap piling up in registration, onboarding, invoices, payments, not sexy. The ads are sexy. Everybody sees the ad and the new video. No one checks payments and invoices and onboarding emails, but your customers are, every one of them is going through that. So first of all, again, before KPIs, check your own, onboard yourself, open multiple accounts, be on the newsletter, get everything the company does, be on LinkedIn, follow on LinkedIn, see what you're actually sending to the world. You'll be surprised what you find straight away. After that, check numbers. Let new people, by the way, another tip is let new people, every new employee, let them, before they do anything, let them on board. Let them open an account and tell you straight away, honestly, what they think. Fresh eyes, because you're not fresh. Cindy mentioned that. It's, at some point, you don't see it anymore. You get your product. That doesn't mean anything. You're not selling to yourself. Can you sell it to someone new? An investor is new, customer is new. Finn said it's all sales. You're right, it's all sales. But sales not in a sleazy way. Sales meaning we're always selling ourselves on a product every given minute. But if someone doesn't get it, you gotta improve something in your sales pitch. So I will say, check that, then KPIs. Ultimately, I think if you do that, you're gonna be 90% you're on the ball, is my advice usually. Yeah. Simpler than you think.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, look, I think that's everything. If anyone has any final questions, just interrupting me right now. Really appreciate that everyone came today. Do the panelists have any final last word?
Thanks for putting this together, Adam.
Yeah. Thanks for coming.
Cheers, Adam. Yeah, good luck to everyone on their own journeys with their own businesses. That's all I'd say. Best of luck.
Yeah, cheers, guys, and I'll share. I'm going to make a WhatsApp group, so I will share that with people after the event. Thanks very much. We'll give it a go. Bye.
Thanks a lot, Adam. Thanks, everyone.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.